In July 2021, we took the caravan to a quiet wooded campsite on the outskirts of Ayr, on the west coast of Scotland. We were just a few minutes away from Prestwick, where the local kids' sailing school were making the most of the glorious weather, so we just sat in the sun and watched them. The next town north is True. The bank, which protects the harbour from the worst of the weather from the Irish Sea, was built in the 1840s from ballast dumped by incoming cargo ships. Troon is an important port for the import of timber and is home to an enormous woodyard. A few miles inland is the 14th century Dundonald Castle, which was the home of King Robert II, grandson of Robert the Bruce. Archaeological digs have found relics showing the site has been used for over 3,500 years. Its position on the top of the hill gives 360-degree views over the surrounding countryside. Back on the coast and a bit further north is Saltcoats, where a small harbour was built in the late 1600s to export coal. Locals used to boil seawater to extract salt in small cottages called salt cots, hence the town's name. It's a popular resort for Glaswegians, as it and adjoining Ardrossan are only a 40-minute train ride away. Ardrossan is the departure point for the Calmac ferry service to Brodick on the Isle of Arran, and the beach just out of town is perfect for watching it pass Ayrshire Craig. The beach stretches for miles along the edge of the Firth of Clyde, with views out to the Isles of Arran and Little Cumbrae. The next resort is Seamill, where we stopped at another popular beach. On a rocky promontory above Seamill is the tiny hamlet of Portoncross, an area that's been inhabited since the Iron Age. Here the rocks have been worn away to look like Emmental cheese. The castle in Portoncross was probably originally a single-storey house until the late 1400s, when an upper storey was added, and an attic. In 1739 the roof was blown off in a gale. It was declared an ancient monument in 1955 and was restored by the Friends of Portoncross Castle from 2010. Two churches stand in Church Close, Dalry, a small town about 9 miles from Portoncross. A little further northeast is Castle Semple Loch, home to a canoe club. Whilst England was sweltering in a heat wave, here in Scotland the temperature was in the mid-20s and perfect for messing about on the water. "15 miles further north we came to the ridge above Greenock and looked down over Ardmore on the opposite side of the Firth of Clyde. Down in Greenock Harbour we saw Royal Caribbean's Anthem of the Seas, a ship we last saw when we moored behind her in Boston, Massachusetts in 2019. Then we went just along the road to Greenock to watch the activities of the boats on the Clyde. This was as far north as we went, and we drove back down the coast, stopping at the big Largs Yacht Haven, which claims to be Scotland's finest marina. The outer area is the sailing club, which was very busy with people in small boats enjoying the summer holiday. The inner harbour has berths for 700 larger boats. For the second half of the trip, we explored the area south of Ayr. Just outside Dalrymple, we crossed over the River Doon at Pear Tree Bridge. Here we came across this collection of wooden toadstools. We went for a look, and it turned out to be a complete fairy village called Dalrymple, which had been created at the roadside, close to a little stream. At the mouth of the River Doon is a wildlife reserve. The river is crossed by a new bridge, which carries the South Ayrshire Way long-distance footpath. Here we saw an experienced paddleboarder. Then he taught a lady with all the gear and no idea. She did get it eventually though. Further down the coast is the tiny picturesque village of Dunure with its small but well-sheltered harbour. On the wall behind the harbour is an old fishing boat and a couple of wicker seahorses. A walk through the village leads to a hill topped by the 15th century castle. Most of it's in ruins, but just in front is a dovecote which would have held some 200 nesting boxes and would have supplied the castle with fresh eggs and meat. The castle's in a commanding position on the edge of the cliff. A modern staircase leads to the top, where we could see Ayrshire Craig in the distance. The path back down gives a good overview of the village. Culzean Country Park covers an area of around 300 acres, and the entrance road goes through a strip of woodland. At the heart of the estate, a gateway with a wicker model of a mermaid leads to the massive Culzean Castle, ancestral home of the Kennedy family, and where Dwight D. Eisenhower had an apartment. The north of the house overlooks the Firth of Clyde and the Isle of Arran. On the south terrace there are a couple of cannons which have been there for around 250 years, though they're much older than that. The barrels were made of bronze in the late 1500s, and the brass decoration was added in the early 1700s. A flight of steps leads down to the terrace garden. At one end of the terrace is the orangery. At the bottom of the terrace is Fountain Court, with a couple of wicker dolphins, which rock when touched. The court was completely restored in 2018 as part of a £2.5 million programme of works on the estate, which is so large that we drove from the castle to the walled garden. One half of the garden is devoted to flowers and vegetables, and there's a wicker model of an Ayrshire Coast onion, which was bred by the castle gardener in 1887. It can grow to weigh 6 pounds. There's also a wicker gardener. The other half of the garden was used for pleasure, with pathways meandering through ornamental trees and shrubs. Here was a giant starfish. Passing the giant pear by the potting shed, we drove to Swan Pond. Here the Loch Ness Monster had come for a change of scenery. A path goes round the edge of the pond and eventually leads to the 18th century pagoda. The lower level was an aviary and the upper a tea house. A path leads from the pagoda to the seashore, overlooking Arran. Driving to the exit, we stopped at the deer park, which has been here since the 1750s. As well as the herd of red and fallow deer, there's also a family of llamas. This made an unusual end to a lovely day out.